Warning: the following podcast has been rated listener R due to strong language, violent situations, drug references, sexual innuendos, and who knows what else. Listener discretion is advised. With that being said, hang on, sugar tits, because we're about to get wobbled.
What is going on, my fellow Americans, Mexicans, Indians, Arabs, and terrorists? Welcome to another episode of Let's Get Wobble podcast. Seriously, though, if you're a terrorist or people willing to do harm, you probably shouldn't listen to this podcast because you should go fuck yourself. Anyways, what's up? Welcome back. So this episode I'm going to be doing by myself again. I was trying to think of another topic to talk about. I wanted to give you guys some better consistency instead of going a month without a fucking podcast sometimes. And I really sat back and was trying to think. Kristen has been gone for the majority of the weekend. She went out to the Royal Rumble in Indianapolis and just kind of had the house to myself for the weekend and tried to do a lot of relaxing and recouping. And not really that I had anything to recover from, but just take a weekend to not really do a whole lot. Still while staying busy, but like not getting into too much shit. But anyway, I was sitting around thinking and I was like, you know what? I could do a podcast on cooking because a lot of people may not know this about me, but I grew up cooking. I grew up in the kitchen with my families and stuff. And especially now, before when I worked second shift, I never really cooked a lot because I would get up super late in the morning, sometimes early afternoon, get ready, go to work, come home late in the evening. You know, most of the things that I had to pack for my lunch or for a regular person's dinner was leftovers from the night before that Kristen had made, or just something that was quick and easy to cook or to make, or quick sandwiches or something like that. But now working first shift again, kind of like I was back before when I was working first shift, you know, I'm cooking most of the dinners that we have now, which isn't a bother to me. I do enjoy cooking. It doesn't bother me at all. But just to kind of give you guys a background of like my cooking experiences and some things that I like to cook, and maybe some tips and tricks you guys didn't know about cooking, or maybe you guys send me tips and tricks of something that I'm fucking up while I'm cooking. I don't know. But I hear that like there's people out there that can burn macaroni and cheese and like have a hard time cooking hot dogs. And I'm like, I guess that's how I started. I started out doing that, but I also had a good base of learning from my family. So some of the notes that I have here, like I said, I grew up in the kitchen, so I watched my mom cook a lot of meals. I learned how to cook an omelet from my grandpa, and I remember that I was probably back in middle school, maybe. It was when we were off for the weekends. I would go over to my grandpa's every weekend, and we would go hang out for the weekend, and then we would go to church on Sundays. And I remember one of the things that I loved that my grandpa made was just a ham and cheese omelet. Super simple. He would put peppers and onions in his. And back as a kid, I wasn't a big fan of peppers and onions. Now I love them. But I always asked him, I told him, I said, I tried to make omelets before and I kept fucking them up. And I told him, I was like, I don't know how you do this. So he brought me in the kitchen and showed me how to scramble the eggs. And a big thing about omelets, if you've never made one, is patience. You have to know when to flip the egg, when to flip over the omelet. You know, if you do it too early, you're going to fuck it up and end up making scrambled eggs. And that's what a lot of people have difficulty with when they try to make an omelet, is it turns into scrambled eggs. But I just, something about that memory that I have with my grandpa. I mean, I hate that he's not here anymore, but that was one of the things that I learned from him, was just a simple omelet. One of the things too, I remember growing up, my mom was a really good cook. She made most of our dinners. Dad usually did a lot of grilling out and stuff. And I'll talk about some memories that I have of him cooking next. But with my mom, I remember asking her as a kid, I was like, so if you had a restaurant, what would be on your menu at your restaurant? And one of the things that she did really well, which as a kid, I never really knew kind of what it was or how she made it until she finally showed me how to do it. But she would call it her bum special, and that's what we called it as kids growing up, was bum special. But really all it is everything that you love about breakfast all mixed into one big, I don't know, breakfast bake or casserole, I guess you would. but it was potatoes O'Brien, which is like a hash brown with peppers and onions already in it. Cook those all up, put in your favorite meat, cook that up, put eggs in it, and cover it with cheese if you wanted it. But it was just really good, and she called it her bum special. And now as an adult, that's one of my favorite things to make for breakfast. Is like a breakfast casserole. Breakfast is one of my favorite things to make because you can mix sweet and salty, and it's really good. There's so many different things you can do with breakfast. But I remember growing up, that was one of the things. My mom made a killer lasagna, and I just got off the phone with her. I was talking to her about it. Anytime I've ever done a lasagna, I always use the oven ready noodles. It's just something that I'm familiar with. It's super easy. You make everything, you put the oven ready noodles on, just throw it in the oven, and it's done. Mom said if you want to make a good lasagna, you have to use the noodles you got to boil and do. The extra work goes the extra mile, I guess. But it's one of the things that I haven't made yet. I've always just done oven ready lasagnas or oven ready noodles, but that's something I'm going to have to try because I definitely used to miss my mom's lasagnas. But growing up, after my mom and dad got divorced, we lived, of course, a single family or single parent home. Living in a single parent home, a lot of our meals as kids after we'd come home and have dinner were pretty easy meals, just stuff that my mom could throw together quick before after she got home from work. And as us growing up, we would help her make some of those easy meals so that way she didn't have to do them. And doing dishes and stuff for her, I can remember some of those meals that we had. Beef and noodles, which is what I made tonight. I probably fucked it up because I made it too early and now I'm letting it sit in a crock pot and we're not going to have dinner till later. I expected it to be done a little later and it's not. It's done now. And hopefully I didn't fuck it up, but we used to have beef and noodles as kids. My mom wasn't a huge fan of making pot roast. Every once in a while we would have a pot roast, but her growing up, I remember she used to tell me they had pot roast once a week. And I know as a kid, it just didn't really translate for us because mom wasn't a huge fan. She had got burnt out on pot roast, but us as kids love pot roast. And even now, Kristen, when I called her and asked her, she said that's one of her things that she loves that I make. But once again, I'll cover all that later. But some more stories that I have from mom and growing up cooking with mom. I can remember a time where there was a big snowstorm coming. And of course, everybody knows if you're from, the northern part of the country or northeast part of the country, however you want to call it. But when there's a big snowstorm coming and you're prepping and getting everything ready so that way you can, if you're snowed in for a couple days, you have all the essentials, or if it's one of those things where you're going to work and back and, there's not really, you're not stopping at the grocery store for stuff. You're getting the essentials. You're getting bread, butter, milk, eggs, whatever have you. And I can remember as a kid, us going to the store with my mom, and she told my brother and I to go get a loaf of bread. It's just something that we needed. We were prepping for a storm or whatever. I think we were kids and it was around winter break or something because I know we didn't have school for a couple of days, knowing that it had snowed that bad. But um, my brother and I went to go get a loaf of bread, and like I said, with people tearing everything off the shelves in a time like that, the bread that we normally get wasn't there, which, single parent home, we got the cheap bread, just the cheapest shit you could find. It was bread. It worked for us. That's what we used. And I remember I told my brother, I was like, they don't have our bread here. And Cam's like, yeah, that's weird. They don't have any of our bread. He's like, oh, all they got's this. I can't remember what fucking bread. It was just a wheat bread, but it was more expensive than what we normally get. So we went ahead, picked it up, and took it over to mom. Cam's like, all they got's rich people bread. And I just remember hearing my brother say that, but that's what it translated to us as kids. Like, it wasn't the kind of bread we get. It's the way more expensive bread. And mom got a chuckle out of it. She always thought it was funny, but that's just how we grew up. We grew up stretching meals and kind of budgeting, of course, because my mom never really asked for help for me. She did a really good job of somehow managing to do it by herself, and couldn't be more thankful for that. And the way that I grew up, we just got off the phone and talked about a bunch of stuff and meals that we cooked and just kind of how we grew up and how things were growing up and how we lived. And it was definitely a struggle from time to time. I'm not going to say that it wasn't, but I'm going to say that it definitely made us who we are today. And I wouldn't take it back and I wouldn't change anything that happened for anything because I really do feel like it molded me to who I am today. But I can remember that. And then I can remember another funny story about my brother. I really hope he listens to this because this shit is so funny and I hope that he remembers it. But as a kid, once again, we're home from school one day. There was snow or something, and Camden, I remember, made a bologna sandwich. And I was watching TV, I think, at the time, but he came in and was sitting there eating his sandwich, and my mom was there too. So it must have been maybe a weekend or I can't remember, but he said, "Man, this bologna sandwich just tastes really weird." And we were like, "Okay, what's wrong with?" He's like, "What's wrong with your sandwich?" He's like, "I don't know." He's like, I put lettuce and mayonnaise on a bologna sandwich or cheese," and he said, "It don't taste right." And mom spoke up, and she's like, "Cameron, we don't have lettuce in the fridge." He's like, "Yeah, we do. It's in the bottom of the fridge in the drawer." And he told her, he's like, "Mom, that's lettuce." And mom said, "No, Camden, that's cabbage." And I can remember being a kid, and I laughed so hard at this, but I told, because my brother freaked out. He's like, "Oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? Like, what do I need to do?" And I remember as a kid telling my brother, I'm like, "Dude, you need to go in the kitchen right now and you need to drink a boiling pot of water." He's like, "Well, why? Why do I got to do that?" And the joke was he had to drink the boiling water so that way the cabbage would cook in his stomach, or else the cabbage would rot in his belly and it wouldn't be good for him. And I remember him freaking out about that. It was so funny. It was just one of those things that we did as kids and joking with each other. But in talking with my mom, she said we needed to do a podcast where Camden and I came clean about all the things we used to do as kids and got away with as kids. And that would definitely be a funny episode. I think it would be great. But I told my mom, I said, it's going to have to be something that I sit and think about for a couple weeks to try to dig up some memories, because it's one of those things where you lie for so long that you start to believe the lie and you think the lie is the truth. And I said, I'm sure we did that shit as kids. Like, we got away with shit that we probably shouldn't have. But I said, I can't think of anything right off the top of my head that would warrant anything like that, or that I could think about right off the top of my head. So hopefully that's a podcast to come. I would love to sit down and interview my mom. I haven't done it yet. She's been a huge influence in my life, and really just it's part of who I am. Like I said earlier, like there's no way to describe what my mom did for me, and I don't even know how to put it into words, but like just how she molded me. Like, we brought up a lot of old topics and conversations that we had, and told her, I was like, "Man, I didn't really mean to get into a deep conversation like this. I just, was asking you about some of the things that you cooked when I was a kid and some things that I really do good when I cook." I can't remember, but I know sitting down and having a conversation with my mom would probably be a 3 hour fucking talk, and us just letting shit out and getting shit out about my childhood. And I'd love to hear about how her childhood, and tell her telling some of her stories. Maybe I'll try to convince her to do that one of these weekends when I go over and make her a little study guide like I do whenever I do my podcast. But so, from moving with that, a lot of the memories that I have of my dad cooking were more when I'm late middle school, early high school, because obviously the divorce happened late middle school, early high school. So I remember dad cooking a lot more when around that age. Um, I called my dad too. One of the things that I remember specifically um, was he made pork chops one night at his camper that we were staying at a campgrounds, and he had this berry sauce that he had with these pork chops. And I don't remember much about it, but I remember it was one of the best sauces that I ever had with a pork chop. So I called him up and kind of asked him the same question. I was like, "Hey, what are some of the things that you cooked for us as kids that you remember that we really liked?" And we talked a little bit about, and my dad, of course, does the dad thing, and he did a lot of grilling. So he was great at doing cheeseburgers, hot dogs, fucking ribs, pork chops, steaks, you name it. My dad was really good at that stuff. But I asked him, I was like, "Dude, where did you get that berry sauce from?" And this was, I was a freshman maybe. So 2012. So over 10 years ago now. But I asked him, I'm like, "Dude, that berry sauce." He's like, "I remember where I got that too." He said it was somewhere up in Westerville at some kind of market. I was like, "Damn, that's not something you got at a Walmart or anything." He's like, "No." He said, I never did find anything really like that. And I told him, I said, "I would love to find a sauce like that, because I would love to use it for pork chops." Because if anybody has cooked pork before, sometimes pork can get really dry. And just trying to figure out what sauce would be good. And I remember having that sauce and just wish that I still had it. But he told me he got it from someplace, and I told him, I was like, I got to try to find something that compares to that. So, tell you what, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. I've got to get another beverage here. I'm almost out of this one. So, give me just a second. I'm going to go on break real quick. I'll come back here in just a second.
Are you tired of going to Great Clips and them fucking your shit up?
Are you fucking tired of going home and feeling like you ain't even worth getting laid? Come on down to Good Old Boys Barbershop and get you a fresh cut.
Good Old Boys Barbershop, 309 North Street, Caldwell, Ohio, 740-509-2669.
Find him on Facebook, book you an appointment, and get your shit fixed. Walk in the door feeling like shit. You're going to walk out the door feeling like $1 million. Coming from Wobble himself, this place is the place to fucking be. If you're in Noble County, if you're in Guernsey County, if you're in Monroe County, Ohio, it's worth the fucking drive. Get your ass down, book you an appointment, sit in this chair, and let this man cut you up right. That's Good Old Boys Barbershop, downtown Caldwell, just off the square. Okay, so we're back from our little break we had. One of the big things that my dad told me, he listens to every episode, and I can't be more thankful for him for that. My dad supports me, and my mom does too. They support me with everything that I do, whether right, wrong, or indifferent. But they do a great job at supporting me. But my dad and other listeners said that you should really take a spot or find a spot in your podcast where you're announcing you're going to have a break and then play your ads. Because my ads do kind of come out of nowhere. I just find a place where it sounds good and break it up and put the ad in. But I'm going to try to do that a little bit better. I'm going to try to find a place to break and find a place that the ad really fits in. Still trying to look for more sponsors. So if you know of any local companies or anything that'd like to get with somebody, let me know, because I'm really just trying to help out other people by getting their word heard too. So not looking to make any money off of it, just looking to try to help people out. I called my dad and talked to him a little bit because I cooked a lot of meals when he moved in with me into my place that I was renting at the time. I'd gotten out of college. The roommate that I had moved out and into a place with his girlfriend. So I had a whole house to myself, which wasn't bad, but at the same time, I could really use the extra money to help with bills and stuff. I only had a simple job that wasn't paying great money, but my dad moved in with me for a while and helped me out with some of the bills and stuff like that. And I asked him, I asked my brother who lived with me for a little bit of time, and then I asked my fiance now. All three of them, I said, what are some of the meals that I made that you guys remember are some of like meals that I made that you guys really love or staples of me? So kind of turning the question back to myself that I asked my mom previously, if I were to ever own a restaurant, what would I have on the menu? Now, I've never thought about owning a restaurant or anything wild like that because I'm not that great of a cook, I don't think. Believe it or not, when I was a kid, and I remember this, me and my mom were talking about just childhood memories. I remember growing up in middle school thinking I wanted to be a comedian, a stand-up comedian. And I listened to all these people that have done it, and they're like, it's just one of those things you got to jump into. You got to full dive into it. But it's just not something that I've really ever tried to dive into, or it was just a thought. I always liked making people laugh. I always wanted to be the joke. I wanted, anytime there was a group of people around, I always wanted to be the person that made everybody laugh. But I don't know. It was just something I was thinking about. But anyway, I asked everybody what their favorite meals of that I had made were. And I'll start off with me. One of the things that I think that I really do well at is steak. Just a simple steak and baked potato, steak and shrimp and baked potato. And the reason that I feel like I like to do those is steaks are so versatile. I mean, granted, yes, it's just a steak, but there's so many different things you can do to a steak. There's so many different ways to cook a steak. One of my big things that I've heard as a controversy of people asking is, when you cook steaks, are you the type of person that leaves your steak in the fridge all the way up until it hits the grill? Or are you one of those people that lets your steak get room temperature and then cooks your steak? I've done my science on both. I've watched videos. I've done research on them. I prefer my steaks to stay in the fridge up until the time that I put them on. And the reason that I guess I've learned to do that or found to do that is I feel like sometimes when you take a steak out and you season it and you leave it out to get room temperature, it just feels like it kind of breaks down just a little bit. I don't know. It doesn't hold together as well, I guess I would say. I've noticed for me, I will take steaks out once they're thawed. I will season them up really good and I'll stick them back in the fridge. Let them stay cool. Let them get in the fridge. And I'm one of the people that like my steak medium rare, so I don't cook my steaks very long. So really for me, letting it get up to room temperature doesn't benefit me all that much. I like to keep the inside of the steak cold because that's the way I like my steak. Really red, honestly, in the center. I don't like a whole lot of browning in my steak, really, just on the outside. But I think everybody has their own method and everybody has their own thing that works for them. But I mean, you can cook steaks on a Blackstone. You can cook them in a pan. You can. I've heard people sous vide. I think it's what that method's called. I've never done it, but basically putting a steak that's in a freeze dried bag in water, like in like a boiling water solution to let the marinade all stick with it. You can marinate steaks. You can season steaks different. I know some people, and I used to be that person. A steak only needed salt and pepper. That was it. And then obviously later on, when you experiment with different things, I've learned that there are seasonings that are really good that really complement a steak, but there are also things that just are too much for a steak. But like I said, that just is one of the things that I enjoy with the steak because there's so many different things you can do with it. And I feel like I don't nail it every time. I really wish that I could get my consistency down with that. But when I do fucking nail a steak, man, it's good. At least for steaks that I've ever had, I feel like I do a pretty good job with them. One of the things that I also feel that I do really good, and I never ate this until Kristen and I got together, is called a $1 million pasta or a spaghetti bake, which is what my brother called it. But basically, I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but it's spaghetti with red sauce mixed with a marinara, or no, it's spaghetti with red sauce that's also mixed with an Alfredo sauce, put all together, put in a baking dish, and topped with cheese. It just makes that spaghetti sauce more creamy and it gives it a better flavor. And it's just one of those things about pasta dishes too. I don't know if you feel the same way about this, but fresh pasta isn't bad. Now, I'm not saying fresh pasta like homemade noodles pasta, but like when you make pasta or spaghetti and you eat it that night, it's normally pretty good. But for some reason, having this $1 million pasta left over, it gives that Alfredo sauce time to really fucking come together and just get nice and thick and creamy. And I don't know what it is, but it seems like it's so much better the next day. And it's been one of the things that I've absolutely loved to make is $1 million pasta. It's not hard to do. It's super simple, but when I nail it, it's fucking delicious, I think. Another thing that I really like to make and I feel like I nail is my mom's bum special. I told you guys about it. It's just something about breakfast. I listed some of my favorite sit down restaurants towards the end here, and I don't know what it is about breakfast. Breakfast is super simple. Like there's not really a whole lot you can do with breakfast, but there is at the same time. A lot of options that you can do, but I don't know, just something with breakfast. I feel like it mixes in the sweet and salty or sweet and savory aspects that I really love about breakfast. A lot of people I'll hear talk and they're like, I've never been a breakfast person. I don't really eat breakfast a whole lot. And I've always been a breakfast person. When I eating at the schools, I always ate breakfast at schools. When I went to college, I looked forward to their breakfast when I was there. And then even now, I love breakfast food. I always prep breakfast sandwiches. I even did it again this week. I prep breakfast sandwiches on the weekend. So that way I can take the sandwiches to work. And then every morning I heat up a sandwich real quick and have it for breakfast in the morning with the guys. But breakfast is one of my big things. My mom's bum special is just one of them. Whether I use the potatoes with ham, sausage, bacon, whichever I decide to use that time, the cheese, it's so fucking good. But I feel like I do pretty good with it. One of my favorite things that my dad says that I make are chicken bacon ranch sandwiches. So I take a chicken breast, I cut it open, pound it flat, and then I'll either sear them or I'll cook them in a pan or something like that. But then I make not a ranch sauce, but more like a soupy, I don't know how you really want to put it. Not ranch dressing, more like a ranch sauce, I guess you would say. But make like a chicken bacon ranch sandwich with a piece of cheddar or something like that. My dad said that my chicken bacon ranch sandwiches, he used to love those back when we lived together. Kristen's, one of her favorites was pork tenderloin or pork chops with my applesauce that I make. And then when I say applesauce, I'm not talking like applesauce on the side, but like an apple flavored sauce that I make. Anything, like I said, pork, you really got to be careful because it gets so dry when you cook it sometimes. So I like to make a good sauce with it. And I found just this easy way to make an apple reduction sauce thing for your pork chops. And if anybody knows, apples and pork go really well together. So I just feel like I nail the sauce when I do pork chops or pork tenderloin and I have that sauce with it. It just makes the pork chops, I think. I think it just makes it taste so much better. It's really nice. Kristen said another one of her favorites that I make is hibachi. So I've been experimenting with like a hibachi style in the bag, throw in the pan, cook it, and let it go. But I like to add my own flair to it. I like to add things into it as it cooks. Um, but really, it's either lo mein noodles or rice, whichever you decide, vegetables, a protein, and then some sort of teriyaki sauce or some sauce that kind of goes with it to bring it all together. Something that you would expect to get from a hibachi restaurant. So a lot of times I'll get that bag and I'll either do chicken or steak, whichever protein I decide to do. I'll doctor the meat up well beforehand, let it marinate or let it sit in seasoning or whatever. Cook the rice or the noodles, get everything ready, throw the protein in with it. And then Kinder's makes a really good teriyaki sauce. Barbecue sauces, I use a lot of their stuff. But adding just a simple sauce into that and bringing it all together, along with some yum yum sauce. I'm a slut for some yum yum sauce. I don't know what it is, but it's fucking delicious. And I think it just brings it all together and kind of the same thing that Alfredo sauce does for pasta dishes for me. It just kind of, it's the glue that holds all that shit together. Man, it's fucking good. Another one of the big things that I've liked to do here recently, once again, nothing that I've ever done before I met Kristen, I like to do at-home crab boils. I used to do crab boils. I never done a crab boil before, like I said, before I met her, but when we would go out and eat crab boils at a restaurant or something like that, a lot of times they're pretty expensive. And to just be able to get the shit that you need to do it at the house, I feel like I do a pretty good job at it. I invited Jonathan and Bailey over the last time we did one, cooked up plenty of crab and shrimp, potatoes, mushrooms. I've done boiled eggs before. I didn't do them this past time, but corn on the cob, just simple stuff like that where you can throw it all in a seasoning and let it boil, let it go. You can get frozen crab legs at Sam's Club or your local grocery store. It's super simple. They're already pre-cooked. All you're doing is really heating it up. If you get pre-cooked shrimp, you're just heating that stuff up. The mushrooms, you're not really cooking too much. You're letting them soak up some of that flavor when you put it in the pot. Everything's pretty much already done. You're just kind of seasoning it and bringing it all together. I let everything cook and do its thing. I do the potatoes and the corn because they normally take the longest. Let those go, throw in the mushrooms and shrimp kind of at the same time because they don't really need to do much. Then throw the crab in at the end because all you're doing is heating that up. Let it get all good. So drain the water off of it and dump it all out on a big tray and just let it go. Man, it's fucking delicious. I don't know. Just doing it at home, I feel like, and saving more money than it is to go out and eat, I think sometimes really helps. But I feel like that's one of the things I do really well. Things that I would like to try to do. I told my mom this recently. Kristen used to eat ribs a lot as a kid, and that's one of the things I've never done. My dad said I was really good at grilling out, obviously. It's just one of the things I guess that comes natural to you when you grill out with steaks or burgers, dogs, pork, whatever you do. It's just knowing where your temperature's at and trying to cook meat without letting it dry out is the hardest part. But I've never done ribs. So I talked to my brother and my mom. They've done ribs plenty of times before. Told them that I'd really like to try ribs myself and trying to figure out a way to do these baby back ribs. I got 2 packs of them at Sam's Club, and I know they're super versatile too, but I'm going to try to figure out what I can do with these baby back ribs, what kind of sauce I can throw with them, and just something to make them really good. If you guys have any ideas, please let me know what your favorite technique or how you guys like to do your ribs. Another thing, I was sitting here thinking, there used to be a little food trailer or food truck, I guess you could say, here in Bell Valley. Was called Timos or Timos. However you wanted to pronounce it, it's kind of the same thing either way. But they used to have what they called a whole hog sandwich, and I used to get that fucking thing all the time. It was so fucking good, and I'd like to recreate that and make it here at the house because I know it would just be amazing. But what came on that sandwich was brisket, smoked sausage that they would split in half. So the smoked sausage would sit on the bottom bun that was split in half, topped with brisket, and then it had coleslaw on the top. And I guess it depends on what kind of coleslaw for me because I'm kind of picky about my coleslaw. But I remember that sandwich. You would think that coleslaw wouldn't taste good on a sandwich. You would think it belonged on the side. But man, they used to make some good just amazing whole hog sandwiches. I was thinking about that today. I was like, man, that fucking sounds delicious. I need to do that this summer whenever we get these temperatures back up where they're supposed to be and get fucking nice and hot. We'll get out there and do a whole hog sandwich. I'm looking forward to doing it. And then another thing that I would like to try, seasoning wise, I've heard of jerk chicken before, and I've heard a lot of people say jerk chicken's really good. I don't like a lot of spice, though, is my problem. But I want to try jerk seasoning and try to do like a jerk chicken. It looks really good, and a lot of people have said good things about it, but it's just something I've never really experimented with. But I think I'd like to do some kind of jerk seasoning or jerk chicken. Just kind of ease into it a little bit, find if I like it at all or if it would be worth my time. But I know some people live with jerk seasoning. I don't know. I don't really know that I've had a whole lot of it, maybe. I can't think of any specific time that I've had jerk chicken, but I just know it sounds good. I think it would taste good. But to kind of wrap the episode up a little bit, I named some of the sit down restaurants that are some of my favorites, and I'll talk some about. Hopefully, I'll add more as I'm going because I've only got a couple listed here. But Kai's Crab Oil is one of my favorite places. It's a staple for Kristen and I. She was the one that took me to it the first time, and that really introduced me to a crab boil that I never really had before. Like I said, before her and I met, I didn't eat crab meat. I thought imitation crab meat tasted like shit, but having real crab meat, it was just something completely different. But just having all that seafood come together with some of the favorite things that I like to eat with corn and mushrooms and potatoes and eggs, and having all that come together is really good. I don't know what it is. If you've never had a crab boil before, but you're interested, I would definitely recommend going to some place or trying to do it yourself with some seafood seasoning or something like that. But it's really, really good. Texas Roadhouse, I guess, is one of my favorite places. Their steaks are pretty consistent. I'm a big steak guy. So knowing that I like to do steaks myself, I also like to go and have a Texas Roadhouse steak sometimes. Plus, their rolls and butter are fucking amazing. I guess that's one of my favorite steak places to eat. Another really good place that I like is Texas de Brazil. I've only been there one time, but man, when we went, the buffet style thing really gets to you. And trying all those different meats and everything, it's really good. If you've never been, I recommend going to a Texas de Brazil or some kind of style of a restaurant like that. Another thing, a lot of people, this is going to be controversy about, but I really enjoy Denny's. I don't know what it is about Denny's breakfast, but I just like their breakfast sandwiches. I like their slams. It goes back to me just enjoying breakfast and liking breakfast so much. I think Denny's outdoes themselves with their breakfast. A lot of people are like, really, Denny's? Like, that's where you want to go eat? Another thing me and my mom talked about too, our big thing was if it was your birthday, you got to pick if we got to eat out anywhere, if it was a homemade meal that you wanted. And that's what was made for your birthday. You got to pick. And I if my mom wasn't making anything or didn't want to make anything, said I could pick where we were going to go out to eat at, it was always Denny's. And a lot of people are like, really? Like Denny's is what you want? That's really what you want to eat? But I'm telling you, just something about breakfast for me. I don't know what it is, but just one of those things. I love breakfast. I think Denny's outdoes herself with their breakfast. I don't think Cracker Barrel is bad, really. I think Cracker Barrel is pretty good too, but I think Denny's just takes over the cake there. And I think Bob Evans doesn't hold a fucking candle to either, but that's just my opinion. Maybe some people have a different opinion, but that's just my opinion. All right, guys, I know this is a little bit shorter of an episode. I just wanted to get something put out there. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned something from this. I'd really like feedback from you guys. If you guys know different ways to cook your favorite meals, or if you want to tell me about your favorite meal, if you want to tell me how to try something different, maybe I'll like it. If you guys know of any kind of berry sauce that you use for your pork, I've been looking for one for forever now, and I just can't seem to find anything that I really like. But any information that you guys are willing to share, I'd love to hear. But thank you guys again for making this podcast what it is. It wouldn't be what it is without you guys, and I really appreciate it. So until next time, keep your stogie lit, keep your beverage cold, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Stay wild, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good one.